Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Ed Leaders Network live event, Best Practices for Holocaust Education in the Virtual World. We're going to be hearing from Jessica Holten and Amanda Friedman from the Illinois Holocaust Museum. My name is Arlen Peebles with the Illinois Principals Association, and I will be your host and tech support for the webinar. I wanted to bring your attention to a couple of items in the control panel that you should have open on your screen. It's the GoToWebinar control panel. The first panel I want you to open is the audio panel. Now most of you are connected to computer audio. That's great, that's the best way to listen. But if you do drop out at any time, you can switch over to a phone call and a teleconference line will appear for you there and you will be able to join us again on the telephone. The next panel I want you to open up is the questions panel. This is where you're going to type your thoughts and questions as you think of them. We're going to have plenty of time with Jessica and Amanda at the end to make sure all of your questions get addressed. So please, as you think of them, feel free to type them into the questions box and we'll make sure your questions are heard. We will be recording this webinar and I'll be sending out a link tomorrow for everybody who wasn't able to make it, and even for those who are here now. If you do want to get the ISB Professional Development Completion Form, you do have to stay on for the full hour with us. We've got to make sure that you have been here the whole time. You can only receive professional development credit for attending the webinar live, so please stay on with us the full hour and make sure you get your 1 hour of PD credit. All right, Jessica, how are you doing today?
Good. Thank you, Arlen. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here to speak to you today about our wonderful virtual resources that the Illinois Holocaust Museum has created for educators and students. I'm Jessica Holten, the Education Outreach Coordinator. I've been with the museum about 7 years. Normally, I am tasked with getting students and educators into the building, but now I am tasked with getting these resources out to educators. And I wanted to introduce my colleague, Amanda. Amanda?
Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Friedman. I'm the Assistant Director of Education at the Illinois Holocaust Museum. I have been with the museum for just a bit over 10 years now, which is kind of hard to believe, but it is great to be here with all of you this afternoon.
Thank you, Amanda. So again, today we're going to learn about our virtual resources. Teaching the Holocaust in general is a difficult task, so taking your students into such a difficult subject and safely out of that topic is challenging. Amanda and I will guide you through our resources, our virtual field trips, our virtual teaching trunks, and our online classroom resources, so you can effectively teach the Holocaust and character education in either your virtual, in-person, or hybrid classroom. So first, we'll ask if anybody has been to the museum before. I think, Amanda, if anybody.
Yeah, if you have, if you could just pop into the questions box in your tool panel, and it'll look like you're sending us a question, but you're actually sending us an answer to the question. So that's how we'll be communicating. Oh, we got a yes, love it, Jessica.
Oh, great.
That's a great first comment. Thank you, Margaret.
All right. Well, so just to give you some quick background about our museum, the mission of the museum is best expressed in our founding principle, remember the past, transform the future. So we're dedicated to teaching the universal lessons of the Holocaust to combat hatred, prejudice, and indifference. The museum not only focuses on the history of the Holocaust, the chronology of the Holocaust, but on social emotional learning, character education, and civic engagement through our exhibitions, our youth exhibition that we have upstairs, and our Take a Stand Center. So since March, since COVID, the museum has worked really hard to pivot toward virtual resources. So we started to create classroom activities using what we have online. We built activities on character education, stories about liberation, genocide awareness, and then we jumped into hosting Zoom or PDs over Zoom. But our biggest project that we worked on was our virtual field trips. So we understand the uncertainty of the times, going back and forth between, in-person, virtual, hybrid. So we looked ahead and created asynchronous and synchronous virtual field trips for 3rd through 12th grades. So I am going to invite Amanda to explore with you our virtual field trips and take you through the classroom activities and how to successfully use these resources in the setting that you have.
Great. Thanks, Jess. So the first of our field trips that we are going to talk about today is we call it our In Our Voices virtual field trip. This is a tour that focuses on our Carcomi Holocaust exhibition. So if you teach 7th through 12th grades and you've brought students to the museum, this is probably the field trip that you did with your students. And so, as Jess said, we wanted this experience to be as flexible as possible and to work for you and your students no matter what format you're teaching in, since whatever you're doing today may or may not be what we're all doing in 6 weeks. And so what we did was we created a pre-recorded video tour of our Carcomi Holocaust exhibition. It's divided into 4 parts. And we did that so that if you have a block schedule and you have a big chunk of time that you want to watch it live with your students, either in person if you're doing that or virtually, you can do that. If you want to break it up over several days, it can work that way. If you want to watch part of the tour together as a class and then provide your students the link and to the next segment and have them watch it independently for homework and then discuss the next day, you can do it that way. There are enough possibilities that whatever format you're doing, whatever works for your timing, whatever works for the way that your students learn and the way that you structure your classroom, this can work for you. So as you're going through these tour segments, it really is replicating the experience that your students would have at our museum with one of our docents. And so the tour is telling the kind of overarching history, chronology, the story of the Holocaust, but through the stories, the artifacts, and the experiences of Holocaust survivors who ended up in the Chicago area specifically and in the Midwest more generally. And so it's giving a very personal telling of this massive history. And so when you register for your tour, you'll sign up through our website, and we'll talk you through all of that in a little bit, but you will receive a link with a password. And when you go to that link, Jess, if you advance us, it'll take you to a website that has the entire virtual field trip. And so you can see there's a little bit of an introduction on the page. There's a link to a worksheet that your students can use to help them to take notes and to kind of structure their thinking as they're going through the different tours. If you have another system or another platform that you're using, great. We just wanted this to be available for people who may not have something right at hand. And so when you're looking at thank you, Jess, at the field trip itself, you can see the video is divided into 4 parts. Each one is approximately 12 to 16 minutes long. So it's in kind of digestible chunks that we hope won't overwhelm your students and their attention spans. And under each video, you'll see that there are links to a glossary, so terminology that's used within that section of the field trip. There are questions for reflection and discussion. Those can be done independently as a journaling exercise. They can be class discussions. They can be writing prompts, whatever, again, works for the format that you're using with your students. And then there are also some additional activities. So these may be video prompts. These may be creative writing exercises. There are different, these are a little bit more project-based, but they're ways that your students can process the information and demonstrate their understanding of the content. And again, these are not required, but if they work with what you're doing, if they're helpful for you and your students, we hope that you'll take advantage of them. So one of the things that is really important about the way that these videos are structured, and each one is very similar of the four in terms of its format. So it starts with a brief introduction. The introduction gets shorter as you go through the steps, the different parts, because the students will have heard much of it before. But it gives students some prompts for things to keep in mind as they're watching the tour, and it lets them know what to expect. Then it takes you through this segment of the exhibition, the portion of the tour, and then at the end there are some reflection and discussion question prompts. And there are questions for each of the four parts. So again, they can stand independently, or you can use them sequentially in a single class session if that works for you. And what's really, I think what's really important about our approach, as I said, is that this is telling the larger story through the narratives and the artifacts of Holocaust survivors, of people who live in our communities, who are part of our broader community. And so it gives a much more personal, and we think a much more interesting way of approaching this history. There are names, there are dates, there are maps, there is a lot of historical information, but there's also a human element that is really critical to not only helping students to connect to the content and to help them to find meaning for themselves in these historical narratives, but it also fosters historical empathy. It helps them to connect to these stories to get a larger understanding of both this historical period and the kind of larger human interactions that we all engage with. So we would like to play just a short segment of the beginning of part one, just to give you a taste of how the field trip works. So Jess, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
Hello, and welcome to your virtual field trip of Illinois Holocaust Museum's Carcomy Holocaust exhibition. On this tour, you will be introduced to a number of Holocaust survivors who made their homes in the Chicago area. You'll learn about upstanders who made the choice to help others, as well as bystanders who stood by and chose not to get involved. Along the way, you will see the impact that people, world leaders, and everyday citizens can have on the world around them by the choices that they make. As you watch and listen to this tour, we encourage you to take notes, not just of facts and figures, but details that surprise you or catch your attention. You can also make notes about questions you still have and how you think that the people in these stories might have felt. This tour consists of 4 parts. At the end of each part, we will ask you questions to consider, and your teacher may give you additional activities or assignments to complete. As we begin our tour, we get a glimpse of what life was like for Jewish families in Europe before the Holocaust began. Families lived not so differently from their non-Jewish neighbors. They got married and raised children, celebrated holidays, had jobs, and took vacations. For assimilated Jewish families in Germany, they considered themselves Germans who were also Jewish. Among more traditional Jews in Eastern Europe, their Jewishness was much more central to their identities and separated them physically and culturally from their non-Jewish neighbors. Adam and Pella Starkoff, shown here in their wedding photo, were childhood sweethearts in Warsaw, Poland. They attended Warsaw University, where Adam studied accounting and Pella studied law. They had a happy life in Warsaw and did not experience very much anti-Semitism before the war began. We will learn more about them later in the tour.
And so in that example, what you see is obviously the setting up of the tour itself, but the introduction of the history and then the introduction of particular survivors. And we have a number of stories of survivors throughout the tour that are woven throughout the 4 parts as kind of threads. And so as their lives intersect with the events from the larger history, we hear about their experiences. And so you actually hear Adam and Pella's story in aspects of their story in 3 of the 4 parts of the tour. And so they become kind of a touchstone for your students to keep coming back to, and to have that human connection to this history. We know that, as Jess said at the very beginning, this is hard history to teach. This is a hard subject to learn about and to really delve deeply into, and particularly in a virtual classroom, it's that much harder. And so it's really important that you frame these stories and give your students a way to safely enter into the discussion and into their learning, and to safely come out. Our goal is to get them thinking. Our goal is to educate them. Our goal is not to traumatize or scare or upset them. And we know that that is possible with some of the more difficult aspects of this history. And so we want to be very careful about our approach. And so always coming back to that shared humanity, to that empathy place, is one of the ways that you can do that effectively for your students. So that if there are questions as we go about anything that we're talking about this field trip in particular, or anything else as we go along, please go ahead and put them in the questions box. So there is a question that came in. We will be sharing and pointing you toward the link where you can register for your virtual field trip. It's not, you have to sign up for the tour before we send you the link, but we'll talk about all that after we go through the different resources. We'll talk about how you connect with with them and get them for your students. So thank you for that reminder, and we will take care of that. The different field trips the different types of tours have different lengths. This one in all is about approximately 50 minutes or so, but that's just going straight through the videos. If you do the activities or have the discussions, obviously that will add more time, but the individual segments are approximately 12 to 16 minutes each. So that is our In Our Voices field trip. Again, we recommend that for 7th through 12th grades. And Jess, we can keep going. Thank you. For our younger students, for our 3rd through 6th graders, we have 2 different field trip options that are based on the field trips that you would take if you were able to come in person to our Make a Difference Harvey L. Miller Family Youth Exhibition. Because these are for younger students, they don't focus on the history of the Holocaust. That would not be appropriate at this age level. Instead, what these field trips do is they engage students with what we call the lessons of the Holocaust. And so these are field trip experiences that are grounded in social and emotional learning, character education, civic engagement, really helping students to think about how they can be positively contributing members of their classroom communities, how they can have a positive impact, how they can be upstanders in their classrooms, in their schools, in their neighborhoods, and in the broader world. And ultimately, what these field trips do is not only help students to develop these skills in the moment, but they also provide a foundation of understanding and a foundation of really kind of connecting with all of our shared humanity, so that as students get older, as they get into the upper grades and into high school and start learning about the history of the Holocaust, other genocides, other human rights abuses, they have this understanding that will make their later studies of the more factual, deeper aspects of the history that much more meaningful for them, and help them to engage with those topics on a deeper level. And so we can go ahead to this part of our field trip offerings. And so If you have, if you're teaching 3rd and 4th graders, we recommend a field trip option called Stand Up, Speak Out. For 5th and 6th graders, we have a field trip option called Make a Difference. And yes, it's the Make a Difference field trip option of the Make a Difference exhibition, because sometimes we are very creative and a little bit confusing, but it's a great field trip nonetheless. Each of these 2 field trips, the Stand Up, Speak Out and the Make a Difference, will operate in the same way. And so we'll take a look at the Make a Difference one today, but the Stand Up, Speak Out will look very similar and will function in the same way. So when you register, you'll get a link and a password that will take you to this page. This is what we call kind of the teacher-facing page, and so it gives you all of the context and the information that you need to then engage your students. Because the Make a Difference exhibition is entirely hands-on, we had to approach it a little bit differently than we did the Holocaust exhibition in crafting the field trip. And so what we really wanted to do was create virtual web-based experiences that would replicate the thematic content and the learning and the stories found in the in-person exhibition, but that would work as a teacher-guided experience for in-class learning, a teacher-guided experience for virtual learning, and could also potentially be an independent student-directed activity if your students, or could be any combination of those. And so it's made up again of discrete elements that can come together in different ways in whatever format is going to work best for you and your students. And so as you scroll down the page, you'll see there are a series of activities, and we've kind of broken out and grouped them according to some different themes and according to how much time they'll take. And so if you have a limited amount of time to spend on this, that can help to guide your decision making. These can also be done similar to the field trip we just looked at, all in one go, which is pretty intense, or can be broken up and done over a number of days. So if you were to take this field trip option and do all of the different activities that we have to offer just back to back and go right through, we estimate that it would take about an hour and 20 minutes. You can also, if you want to reduce that time and want to know kind of how to approach it, if you would like to focus within this tour on contemporary upstanders, people in the world today who are making a difference, we have suggested activities to do on that topic. That takes 20 to 30 minutes. Or if you're more interested in giving your 5th and 6th graders an age-appropriate introduction to the Holocaust, which in our way of thinking is getting them thinking about stereotypes, prejudice, why it's important to stand up for what's right, why discrimination is so harmful, kind of getting them thinking about these issues without getting too deep into the history of the Holocaust, without going into atrocities and those more difficult aspects that they're definitely not ready for. This is a way that you can do it in a way that will, again, give them that foundation of understanding, but in a way that is appropriate to their cognitive development level and their social emotional development. That variation of this tour we estimate at 30 to 45 minutes. So you can choose whichever one of these that you'd like, and when you do, then you'll go ahead and click on the link, which Jessica will demonstrate for us. And then it'll take you to a page that you can then share with your students. And so this page has all of the activities for the type of tour that you select, the variation of this field trip option that you selected in an order that we recommend as making sense and as kind of building on each other. So it starts with a short intro video that kind of sets it up and gives students, again, some themes and some things to think about as they go through and lets them know kind of what to expect. There is a notes page option for this tour as well. that your students can use if you would like them to. Again, if you have another platform, another way of tracking their thinking and their work and their note taking, go ahead and use that. Absolutely. This is just there if you need it. And then as they go through the different activities, some of them are based in Google Slides, some of them are actually using Prezi, and a few of them are writable PDF-based activities. All of the video activities, the Prezis, the Google Slides, and the actual videos are the videos are captioned, and the Prezis and the Google Slides are all narrated. So if you have emerging readers, if you have language learners, there's an extra layer of accessibility there for your students. You can also mute the volume so that if you want your students to read and not listen, that is absolutely an option as well. While I do narrate many of these activities, there are other narrators as well. So your students, if they do use the audio, will get to listen to people other than me, which is nice for them too. One that I would like to show you just as an example is a really, a pretty interesting activity. It's called, we have an activity in a section of the exhibition that we call Choices. It's a set of, the installation is actually a set of school lockers that each tell the story of an upstander, a person who faced a choice, had to make a decision, and ended up, through their decision, the choice that they made, having an extended positive impact on a situation and on the world more broadly. And so we wanted to recreate that content. And so let's take a look at Sugihara, if you would. So this is an activity.
Welcome to the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center's
Oops. So sorry. Yeah, go ahead and pause it. So this
thrived.
Hold
And
on.
the largest city, Vilna, was known.
It keeps saying.
Yeah, it's okay. Just pause it, and we'll just hang out, and I'll explain it. Is it freaking out? Okay. Yeah. So bad choice. Technology is super fun. So let's stop right here. Hang on. Jess, I don't know what's happening.
It's kind of going on its own right now.
So let's
try again. Chune knew.
I promise this has worked every other time we've shown it to people. You all spend all day with technology. You know how crazy it can be. So let's just go back to the tour page, Jess, and I'll just explain it. And let's not fight with it.
There we go.
There we go. Good job. So good teamwork there. So when Google Slides is cooperating, which is most of the time, what that activity does is it takes you through the story of Chune Sugihara, who was a Japanese diplomat in Lithuania during at the beginning of World War II. He started issuing visas to Jewish refugees to allow them to travel through the Soviet Union to get to Japan, and many of them ended up ultimately in Shanghai. And so this was a way for people to get out of Europe, to get out of the imminent danger of the Holocaust. The Japanese government was an ally of Nazi Germany, so they did not like that he was doing this, as you might expect, and so they ordered him to stop. He then faced a choice. Would he follow the orders he was given? Would he continue to issue these visas and trying to help people, even though he was going against a direct order of his government? And so the slideshow takes you through that story and gets you to that decision point. Students are then presented with 3 options for what choice, and they have to decide what choice they think he made. They can then actually, within the activity as you're watching it, they can click on their screen to make the choice. And it will take them either to, yes, that is the choice he made, and here's what happened as a result. Or if they identify a choice that's not what he did, they then get it's a good idea, but try again, and then it takes them back to the decision point. And so there actually is, it doesn't obviously exactly replicate the activity in the gallery, in the exhibition, but it gives them a degree of engagement and lets them interact with the content and with the narrative in a way that really matters. This is how they're actually making the choice that as they're learning about it. So it's a really great activity that I promise that is the first time it has ever not worked correctly. So trust us, please. The other activities are similar. Each of them, the thing you didn't see in that is that at the end, there are again some discussion questions and some comprehension activities embedded within each of these discrete activities. If there are certain ones that you really want your students to do and you don't want to do the rest, that's fine. You can assign them whichever and provide them whichever links to the direct activities that you'd like. Again, our goal is for this to work for you. So whatever is going to make this useful for you is absolutely what we want you and your students to be doing. Jess, let's go down just a little bit more and let's take a look at the Upstander Oath, if you would. The final activity in both the different variations of the Make a Difference field trip and within the Stand Up Speak Out field trip is an opportunity for students to take everything that they've learned through this experience, thinking about what interests they have, what they care about, what skills they have, what they get excited about, and to figure out what they are going to do to make a difference, to be an upstander, to get involved in their classroom, their school, their community. And so we've given them on this sheet that you see, we've given them a number of suggestions for types of actions that they might want to take. They can also, they don't have to use these, they're not restricted to them, but if they would like to, these are some prompts, or they can create their own. And then when they go to the next page, so scroll down, they have an oath that they can take. And so they can type in their pledges, what they promise to do to be an upstander. There's a place at the bottom where they can put, they can sign it or they can put their name. And then if you choose to have them submit it, they then can send this to you using whatever, Flipgrid, Seesaw, whatever it is that you're using in your classroom to share what they've been working on. So that is kind of the quick overview of our Make a Difference field trips. So if there are any questions, please go ahead and put them in the questions box and we will get those answered. And in the meantime, Jess, we can go back to your PowerPoint and continue with, I believe, teaching trunks are next. Am I remembering that correctly? Excellent.
Are there any questions, or I don't think I can see the questions.
Not so far. We've answered all the questions that have come in so far.
Great. Okay. So our biggest, I think, supplement to our field trips are our virtual teaching trunks. And we used to send out literal steamer trunks that weighed 120 pounds with posters, classroom sets of books, literature circle sets of books, videos, documentaries, all sorts of resources. So now, since we didn't know how things were going to be this school year, we decided to put them online and make them virtual. So I'm going to click in. So we have virtual teaching trunks for grades K through 4 and 5 through 6, as you see here, and then 7 through 12 over here. You can see. And we use ebooks, digital text. We have documentary films of survivors that accompany what you see in the virtual field trip for the Karkomi Holocaust exhibition. There's activities, and then we do digital artifact explorations. So I wanted to show you kind of the book listings. We didn't ask, Amanda, what grade are people teaching in the...
That's a great question. So yeah, if you are able to jump into the questions and let us know. Okay, we have 11th and 12th.
Okay.
8th, more 8th, lots of 8th grade teachers, junior high. Excellent. Ooh, a 3rd grade teacher, hooray.
Oh.
Love 3rd grade. Okay, school. So Jess, it looks like primarily junior high, but with some elementary and with some high school mixed in.
Mixed in. So let me go over the 7th through 12th because it
Yeah.
looks like we're in that that grade range. So there are book listings with and this 7th through 12th grade is primarily going to talk about the themes of the Holocaust and dive into upstanders, bystanders, and more about survivors' life. So we have, for 7th through 12th, we have a list of books. You can click on them. This is All But My Life by Gerda Weissman-Klein. It's a great memoir testimony of her survival. And then we have, each have an overview, synopsis, classroom activities with the student PDF, and you can print this off for the students. Let's see here, and structured readings. Some have videos that you can go to, and they tell you where to get the book online. So it's a very helpful resource. Then you have survivor documentaries. And I think this is great because if you have time to go deeper into the Holocaust, you can use these documentaries that were created by the museum. And I will click in, actually. They should, oh, hold on.
And I'll answer a question, Jess, that came in while you're working on the password. Yes, as you are using these resources with your students, you can absolutely share the links with them for them to be able to access it without you. So if they're working independently or if they're working from home and you want them to be able to watch one of these streaming videos directly rather than having to go through your Google Hangout or what have you, you can absolutely share the links. We ask that you not share them with other teachers, just because we would like people to register for the field trips so that we have our numbers and we get and we can track who's using them. But within your students, absolutely share away.
And these are great documentaries. So there's 4 here. One about Fritzi, our president, Fritzi Fritzl. So she is a survivor from Auschwitz. And we have Aaron Elster, who was a child survivor. He actually had to hide in an attic for 2 years and was only one of a few survivors from his town. And like I said, these are great supplements to what the virtual field trip offers. So those are the documentaries. I didn't see the password right there. And then I think what's really cool are the artifact explorations. And again, Aaron Elster. So in our regular teaching trunks, we put in artifacts, which are artifacts from our exhibition. And it was really something that students could hold, see up close. They were of passports, naturalization papers, photos. So our lovely colleague Megan created these artifact explorations using some of those within their within the virtual teaching trunk. So this will load, and this is about Aaron Elster, who I told you about, who hid in the attic for 2 years. So this, I think, is a Prezi, right, Amanda?
You know what? I think it's not. It's actually it's not a Prezi, but it looks kind of like a Prezi. Yeah. I can't remember what she used, but it's different.
Well, it works great. And so you have an artifact exploration overview of what you're going to do after. So hold on, I think you watched the video here about his life. Here are some pictures of him. And then reflection questions after you watch the video. And then extension activities that correspond with Aaron's story. So these are Aaron actually, when he arrived in the United States, he ended up in the US Armed Forces and was sent to Korea. I can get to the next one. Here is a journal prompt talking about the attic that he lived in. Let me get this back here. And then even more, and he wrote his memoir, I Still See Her Haunting Eyes. So let me go back. Any questions so far about the virtual teaching trunks? And so again, we have them for, for those that are in third grade, teach third grade, there's K through 4, which is not going to go into the history of the Holocaust. It's similar to our youth exhibition field trip. It's going to be about social emotional learning, character education, some really cool read aloud books that we found online that the students can listen to and follow along. And yes.
Right. And Jess, just a time check, we have about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Just FYI.
Well, I think we're pretty good on virtual teaching trunks.
Yeah. So so there is one more. So 2 questions, Jess, that came in. One is for the virtual trunks, how long do you have the link for?
You can have them, I'm pretty sure it's 60 days. So I will have to,
yeah. For the field trips, you have it for about a month. And for the trunks, it's approximately 2 months.
Yes. And, but however, you can talk to Megan, our colleague that handles all the virtual teaching trunks. She will totally extend the password for you to log on. And
if you're using the materials, she is happy to work with you to get more out of it. Absolutely.
Same with the virtual field trip, right, Amanda? It's, if you need to use it in between months or a little bit longer, our other colleague, Matthew, who books all the field trips, he will extend that for you and give you the next month's password. So it's
Absolutely.
we work very well with teachers.
We are here for you. Our job is to make your job easier, and so we're going to do our best to make that happen. Just a couple other questions that came in. One is if there's information about other modern genocides. We do have a physical, like that we would ship to your school, teaching trunk about genocides and human rights atrocities other than the Holocaust. We do not yet have a virtual version of that trunk. That is something that we plan to develop and we hope to develop. We don't have an exact timeline on that, but it is something that we're working on. And if you're interested in resources, we can, or if you need suggestions, let us know. We're happy to make recommendations and help you try to find what you need. And then Jess, anything else? You look like you were gonna.
Well, we have our virtual professional development that I wanted to kind of highlight quickly, because we do, speaking about other genocides, we are doing a workshop on the Native American genocide. So we are bringing in a scholar. Amanda, do you know who the scholar is?
Yes, his name is, I'm blanking on his last name. His first name is Doug. He's amazing. He's from Northwestern University. And Doug Keel, I think is his name.
Okay.
It'll come to me. I will confirm that. But he is doing a workshop for us in March called Native American Nationhood and U.S. Law, which is going to be phenomenal. And so we hope you will all come to that.
So every year, yeah.
We're also, it's not a slightly different answer to the question, but in January, we will also be partnering with the Arnold Liebster Foundation on a workshop specifically about the persecution of Jehovah's Witnesses by the Nazis during the Holocaust. So kind of a separate genocide and kind of not, but that's another topic that may be of interest.
But in general, we always highlight a contemporary genocide in each year within our virtual professional development. So it really ranges from topics. We just did 2 professional developments last month about anti-racism for elementary and secondary teachers, secondary school teachers. And then upcoming, we have a lot of deep dives into specific topics of the Holocaust. And again, we have the Native American.
And in February, from middle of February through the summer, we will have a new special exhibition called Mandela Struggle for Freedom, which is going to be amazing. And it's going to be about Nelson Mandela and the movement to end apartheid in South Africa. And we actually have 3 different professional development workshops coming up for that one. So there will be one specifically for K4 teachers, so to engage with the topic with younger students, and then 2 that are going to be for 6th through 12th grade. So stay tuned for that.
Oh, they're all from 3:30 to 5, and we offer 1.5 CPDU clock hours for that.
And they are free. So sign up.
Free. And I was going to say, we are doing, Amanda can confirm this, but we will be doing a virtual field trip of the Mandela Struggle for Freedom exhibition. So that's another thing that you can write down that's up and coming for a resource for you.
Yes, and Alex, I agree with you. The Cambodian genocide is a really important topic that we actually discuss quite frequently. It is something that Jessica in particular loves to teach about. So we don't have anything currently on the horizon for this school year, but we will absolutely keep an eye on our offerings, because it is a subject that we come back to frequently.
And Amanda, if you want to type our email address in the chat, and if you have specifically to Cambodia, if you need resources about the Cambodian genocide, you can always reach out. I am the one that always kind of teaches certain genocides from the museum. So.
And so Jess, we've gotten a couple questions about logistics, cost, registration, all of that. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So as we said, our virtual professional development's free, our virtual teaching trunks are free, and then our field trips do have a cost to them. We offer $3 per student for the asynchronous virtual field trip of the Karkomi Holocaust exhibition. And if you want, we never talked about live options, actually.
We did not.
We do have live options with a Q&A with the docent for 20 minutes. So it's a synchronous option where the docent can go into your classroom virtually, and once the students watch the 4 films, they can ask the docent questions and they'll respond. We also have an option. We have a core small group of survivors that are able to speak, and we also have 2 second generation speakers as well that can come into the classroom and give you a 45-minute talk. The survivors are amazing. It's so cool that they learn Zoom and Google Classroom, all that stuff. So we do have these live options optional for our Carcomi Holocaust exhibition, and those options are $5 per student, and that includes the virtual field trip as well. So, and these are incentive pricing to book through November or through the end of October, sorry. And then we do offer opportunity scholarships. However, we know that, budgets are cut, things are tight. So we offer financial assistance through our opportunity scholarship program, which means that all you'll have to do is fill out the registration form for the field trip. Our colleague Matthew will get back to you with a confirmation, and then you will fill out our opportunity scholarship application. It's just an extra step, but you will get your field trip for free. And I hope that answered most of it. For the, is it $2, Amanda, per student for the?
I believe so. Jess, do you want to just go to the website?
Oh, I can do that.
Let's show them.
Totally do that. Hold on, actually, this is in.
So I put both of our email addresses in the chat, and I also put a link to our website. So when you get to our main page, up in that blue bar at the top, click on for educators, and from there you can get into all of our field trip information. And so this has all of our different field trip options, including a few that we actually haven't even talked about yet. And it gives you the all the details, the pricing, the duration, and the registration links are all on this page for the different field trip options that we have. So everything is here. If anything is confusing, if you're not sure what will be the right fit for your students, please just shoot us an email. We are happy to talk you through the options and help you figure out what is going to work best for you and your students.
We have so much. We also offer a Notorious RBG, The Life and Times of Ruth Bader Ginsburg virtual field trip right now, since that is our special exhibition. So please register for that. It is asynchronous, pre-recorded tour, again, like our Carcomi Holocaust exhibition, but you can have an optional museum docent do a Q&A with your students after you watch the video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yes, the prices are per student.
Per student. So this is the Stand Up Speak Out for grades 3 through 4. You can register here, $2 per student. Again, it's just an extra step. If you need, the financial assistance, please fill out the opportunity scholarship form. We don't want it to be a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
So, any additional questions, Amanda?
Not at the moment. So we will stay on for a couple minutes if anybody does have questions, if there are things that you haven't had a chance to type yet. Otherwise, thank you so much for spending part of your afternoon with us after you spent the whole day teaching. To then give us an hour is something that we really appreciate. So thank you for doing that, and let us know how we can help you, and we'll see you and your students around our virtual museum very soon, we hope. So thanks, everybody. And thank you to the IPA for inviting us and for hosting this afternoon. So thank you, Arlen, and everyone.
Our pleasure, Amanda. Jessica, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and all the wonderful resources you've got at the Illinois Holocaust Museum. As I mentioned in the beginning, this was recorded, and I'll be sending out a link to that recording sometime tomorrow. And for those of you who stayed on the full hour, you will be getting the ISB evaluation form to complete, which will then generate an email that has the ISB evidence of completion form attached for entering your professional development credit. When you're all finished, you can close the GoToWebinar control panel, and that will log you out of the session for today. Thanks, everyone. Take care.